multiverse stories, these are more about the characters. And the characters most often are like, it's a lot easier to work with true immortals in this character world, right? Because it's more about what would Captain America do under these settings? What would Peter Parker do if it was this, right? That creates our what if scenarios. So we're always following these characters in these multiple worlds. The easiest one is like the X-Men, right? The X-Men are always like, what would happen if this piece of legislation goes through or doesn't go through? What happens if this one piece of technology happens or doesn't happen? And the X-Men have done a brilliant job of bridging like timelines while still kind of dealing with like they haven't directly gotten into multiverse, but it's implied. Like it's heavily implied because you could not have the events of Dark Phoenix while the Avengers are around and the Avengers not be there, right? So we kind of accepted it a long time ago. The only reason these characters were most often forced together was for marketing purposes, right? Like it's better for Marvel if you can do crossover events and have all your characters together, even though in storytelling, you never really want that. Like Spider-Man stuff doesn't have anything to do with Blade stuff for the most part, unless you intentionally cross their worlds over. And that's what it is. All these are worlds, right? So that's kind of the crux on where I'm going. Like these are kind of a couple of important elements. And I'm going to go back and forth on these three topics right here because I think they're most important. And the last one is just kind of like the scientific component, because there is a science component with the idea of multiple universes, right? Like I have a whole section. So this is kind of how I'm starting off this discussion. The first part of this discussion is kind of defining what a multiverse really actually means and kind of looking at how prevalent multiverses actually are. So much storytelling has been rooted in this quasi-multiverse type of scenarios without necessarily saying that they were multiverse. And storytelling is old. It goes way back. And I'm going to get to some of the earliest examples of what I mean when we're talking about multiverse. Like there are other worlds, other histories, other versions. And these ideas are early on. Like we're going to talk about some of the earliest ones here, right? Let's see, where's that at? Okay. So you can kind of see how I've divided this up here. You see, you have the anthology branch of it. And these are your places like your Twilight Zone, your Tales from the Dark Side, Outer Limits, right? And these guys are important. I'm going to discuss a couple of these separately, right? Then you have your parallel universe, Doctor Who, Star Trek, Stranger Things. Then your major comic book universes, and then even in pop culture, we're seeing representations of multiverse or universe, right? Like that universality. It's 100% required for character-driven storylines. Okay, so I'm gonna get into this right now. Okay, let me see if I can get the first one up here. All right, so the first one I like up here. Who do I got? Okay, Twilight Zone. Okay, this right off the bat. Like Twilight Zone is probably the first like multiverse that we get experience with. Now, when you step into the Twilight Zone, you're not always someplace else. Sometimes you're at home and some crazy stuff's happening where you live at, but sometimes you're stepping into a universe that's completely different. Like you could step into a Germany where the Nazis won, right? In alternate reality. This is back in the 60s. Twilight Zone was heavily on multiverses. Like when you stepped in, that was the whole idea, is that you could end up in another time or space or reality or truth without ever having to do anything. The Twilight Zone doesn't require any participation from you. Your only participation required in the Twilight Zone is existing, right? You could end up in the Twilight Zone. I don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe I get up out of here. Like nothing's ever been positive in the Twilight Zone. So that's something that we have established about the Twilight Zone, is that it's never going to work out in your favor, right? That's the only consistent. But everything else about the Twilight Zone is an X variable, right? Everything. You don't know what era you're going to come out in. You don't know what time period it is. Like a lot of times, it's focused on things that are ironical for you, like personal punishments. Like you're a racist and now you end up in a Nazi time, or like you end up as a Jew, whatever it is, right? But there's a psychology, but there is definitively a time and a space and place that you end up at. You can't drive there, you just end up there. That is essentially what the Twilight Zone is. And they've done it masterfully. This was really my first, like, if I had to say my first exposure to any type of alternate reality or multiverse scenarios, I got to credit that to the Twilight Zone. Like 100% Twilight Zone, right? And it's very consistent with what I think about how a multiverse would work. So they kind of set the table for me. Okay, the next one that if you guys aren't into, man, this is another classic old school one. Not as popular, but it is Tales from the Dark Side, which right off the bat, these are tales from where? The dark side. Not this side, the dark side. So the dark side was already prepping us for a world that's just like your world. It's a lot of stuff. We got a lot of Sams. We got the same stores. You got Kroger, we got Kroger, right? You got the Lakers, we got the Lakers, right? Maybe in their universe, like Magic got traded or something like that. I don't know. But the dark side is just like this place, except it's dark. Like they key on that. Like it looks just like it. You'll be looking around like, man, why does everything kind of look normal, but yet kind of not normal, right? That's essentially the dark side. The dark side is everything that's normal. They tell you, this is the dark side. Everything's just kind of just like you recognize it, except a little bit darker, right? Again, a different place. And it seemed like it manifested different places within that said different place. So this is essentially like two of the major ones. The Outer Limits kind of works exactly the same type of premise. It's just on the fringe, like a fringe reality, things that could happen, just delving into possibilities. So we get this concept, and we've been doing this for a long time if we really recognize who was coming with multiverses and who wasn't, okay? Now, the next one is one of the most famous ones of all time, and of course, that's Doctor Who. Like, Doctor Who really set the table on, like, oh man, why my Doctor Who image didn't come up? It's so infuriating. Let me get this for you guys here. I'm not gonna let this ride, right? Internet tries